Well, greetings to everybody. I've got my old chum Alasdair Macleod on again today to try and explain to me and my subscribers things that sometimes we think we understand, sometimes we do, but sometimes we don't. But there's something happening at the moment you may or may not have heard of, and it's called the Genius Act. And it's got nothing to do with the historical term genius, I can assure you. But as I've always said, when it comes to matters financial, it's a generally accepted thing that when the United States sneezes, Europe catches a cold, and it's coming down the route now. It's coming down the route of the United States, and I would argue that it's the sort of thing that will turn up here, and everybody will be wondering what it is and how it works. Now, Alice has very kindly decided to come on and explain how it works, or how it's supposed to work, and its flaws. And I've been all morning on it. I've been all morning on it trying to get a handle on it, and I, for the life of me, can't understand. I understand how it works, but I don't understand why it would work, and what's the point of it. It's a bit like the old British hovercraft. It was a wonderful invention, terribly clever, but had no practical application, which is why it sort of eventually died. And I see this as the same thing, but I mustn't prejudge anything Alasdair's got to say, and he's just going to give us a 10-minute or so thumbnail sketch on what it is, so you know if it turns up here, you recognize the beast. So, Alasdair, many thanks again for giving me your time. I'm very grateful. I know all my subscribers are very grateful as well. Just put us in the picture on this Genius Act.
Well, I think the first thing to understand is what a stable coin is. I discovered this because I decided some long time ago to buy a Bitcoin, really, for the experience. I'm glad to say I made a bit of money out of it, but I found that what I was doing, dealing in Bitcoin, and it sort of came in little bits. I had sort of half a dozen transactions, if you like, on one sale, and I just wanted to sell a fraction of a Bitcoin. And there were all these different transactions and all the rest of it. But basically, the way it worked was you had to exchange the Bitcoin for something. And in those days, and I reckon it's got to be the same today, of course, people like Binance and so on, the exchanges, were all offshore, unregulated, etc. And the problem with selling Bitcoin for dollars was that as soon as you buy US dollars, you're getting into bank accounts and all the rest of it, and nobody could open bank accounts. Not only could they not open bank accounts, but many banks, if you like, refused to deal with the crypto exchanges. So this was Tether. This was the start of something called Tether, and you would get the stable coin, which was effectively a dollar substitute. That's what it was, and that is still what it is today. There is a fundamental difference in the way this banking works, however, because if you look at Tether, which has been around for quite some time, they will issue a stable coin, but then they've got to guarantee it on the other side. So the question is, how do they do that? And the answer, quite simply, is that they need to ensure that they have, for every dollar they issue, they've got to have a dollar to back it. Now, if you just do $1 for $1, they're not going to make any money out of this. So they started doing a few other things, like undisclosed amounts of Bitcoin, which they held, to try and get a bit of profit going on their books, and so on and so forth. And there's even a story that they bought some gold, which I don't know whether it's true, but you can see that what they're doing, on the one hand, is they're issuing an obligation, which quite simply is a dollar obligation. Dollar for dollar, dollar for dollar. On the other hand, they're using the other side of their balance sheet to punt. Certainly punt in a margin, on the margin. Now, that basically is something that should worry regulators. And I think this is really why they brought the Genius Act in. Because what the Genius Act does is it regulates the stablecoin industry. And at the same time, it insists that stablecoins are invested in short-term Treasury debt. What this means is it actually turns the banking model around completely 180 degrees, because usually what a bank does is it creates credit by lending it. I mean, it just comes ex nihilo, out of thin air. So on that balance sheet, and of course on the asset side of the balance sheet, but on the liability side of its balance sheet, it has to at the same time create a deposit. So you got the loan and the deposit, and basically one gets drawn down against the other. So you've got to continue to have a balance sheet which actually balances. What this does is it does it the other way around. You create your deposit, which is the stable coin. And when you create the stable coin, then you invest it in US Treasuries. So this is a market which is really confined, I think, by the growth, if you like, in the use of stable coins. This isn't something that a bank can just create out of thin air. It is something that there has to be a demand for it in the first place, and then they can issue the stable coin, which they issue incidentally at zero interest rate, and they invest the proceeds in US Treasuries, typically 28-day T-bills, that sort of thing, which currently yield around about 4.5%. So you can see that this is a nice little earner for the banks, but it's not something that it can leverage up on. As far as the Treasury is concerned, the US Treasury, of course, this is a source of funding for the US government. So they're quite happy with it as well. I think as far as the banks are concerned, they are happy to have this, if you like, as a regulated activity, which they may or may not get involved with. The politics behind it are that Donald Trump and his family are obviously crypto enthusiasts, and they have made billions out of their own family crypto activities. So you can see that from the president downwards, there was an enthusiasm for the Genius Act. And indeed, I wouldn't be surprised, as to your point, Godfrey, as to whether regulators elsewhere in the world will follow the Americans with their own version of the Genius Act. But the principal reason for doing that, I don't think is to do with funding or anything like that. I think it's really about regulating an activity which the authorities now see as something which is inevitable. It's going to happen, so we better regulate it. And I think that's the approach. So that, in a nutshell, is what the situation is over the Genius Act and the regulation of these stable coins.
My crypto enthusiastic friends, of whom I have a number, and like you, I made a few bob on it over the years, by the same way as I go to the EBOR meeting at York and bet on the bet on the horses. Very much the same kind of thing in my view. But the whole point of this, I think the whole point of the concept of crypto was that it was not regulated. That's the point of it. And it brings in another dimension on this, unless I'm wrong. I could be wrong. You know, I've been trying to sort of unpick it. So what you have here on a double entry bookkeeping system, if you will, is Treasury bills, which as interest rates go up or down, the capital value can, of course, significantly change, which means that you could find yourself severely imbalanced on your bank sheet, unless, of course, stable coins track the value of the dollar bill, which I thought misses the whole point of having crypto. It seems to be like a sort of Ponzi scheme, really, which is doomed sooner or later, like the South Sea bubble or the tulip bubble or whatever it is, to go bang sooner or later, like when the music stops, pass the parcel, you know, whatever it is. At some stage, because you can make money out of it at the moment if you catch it on when you get out at the right time, you come off the table at the right time. Am I missing something here?
Well, yeah. I think the key to this, Godfrey, is that we're not actually talking about crypto. We're talking about when you buy and sell crypto, what's on the other end of the transaction? Because of the history of the way the crypto market arose, which, as you rightly say, was a sort of anti-state bet, if you like, It wasn't regulated at all. It was very often offshore. It was very, very opaque. It was full of crooks and all the rest of it. It was impossible for an exchange, if you like, to facilitate deals in cryptocurrencies for dollars, for example. They couldn't. You couldn't sell the crypto exchange dollars because nobody wanted to bank with the fix. No bank wanted to run an account for the crypto exchange. And equally, if you, let us say, wanted to take profits on your crypto, again, you couldn't buy dollars for the very simple reason that no bank really wanted to do that business. I mean, I know it's changed somewhat now. It's evolved a little bit, but that was the origin of these stable coins. Basically, they were synthetic credit, if you like, even synthetic to the dollar. So it just literally represented the dollar rather than was the dollar. That was the whole point of it. And I think the Genius Act is all part of bringing this stuff on shore. I have to say, I think that what the authorities are doing is they are exhibiting a lack of understanding of really what credit and money is. Because there is no way this stuff has any status in law. I mean, it really hasn't. It's really only a status, if you like, in the sense that people are prepared to accept it. By regulating it, they are giving it, as to your point, they are giving it respectability. And that I would have thought is an extremely important question, which should have been debated a lot more than just say, Genius Act, here we go, we're going to regulate these guys. So, the banks are happy for us to regulate it because, there's something that, the banks have been, running markets in cryptos. It's incredibly profitable for them, all this. And so that's if you like, is an aspect of the support from the establishment. For some time, I think there was, quite a lot of sort of toing and froing as to who was going to regulate crypto when it came on shore. And I think that battle again, has been resolved to an extent by the Genius Act. So there are a number of sort of, slightly silly reasons for this to come about. But I think the silliest of them all is to give credibility to this, to really what's a scam business. That's really what cryptos are. If you look at the performance of Bitcoin, it actually tracks the Magnificent Seven. So it's exactly the same cohort who are driving the price of Bitcoin as are driving the price of NVIDIA, Microsoft, ABC, and all the rest of it. Or not ABC, what do they call it? What do they call Google now? Alphabet or whatever. So, anybody with actually a sense of markets will understand that this is the sort of thing you get at the top of a credit bubble. This is going to be the most major disaster. It's going to wipe out an awful lot of people. And I remember seeing something, there was a survey, if you like, trying to sort of work out, what proportion of the British electorate actually dabbled in these things. They came up with an incredible figure. Something like 40% of the investing population in this country had an interest in cryptocurrencies. I couldn't believe it. But if that was halfway true, when this pile of rubbish collapses, the consequences for wealth destruction are going to be absolutely enormous. But you can see that from the authorities' point of view, they will be aware of this. They will be aware that this is something which they must regulate because you've got to regulate everything. This is the state approach. You must regulate everything because everybody is crooks if you don't regulate them. The fact that you're building a wall within which the crooks can exist, we'll just ignore that little point for a moment. But there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that the Genius Act will be followed by similar stupid legislation in countries like this. But it's terrifying that the authorities actually don't understand this crypto market at all. They don't understand what it represents. But it's absolutely full of crooks. We all get solicitations to go and buy these things from people we've never heard of. It's just, this is the sort of Wild West, actually, I think call it Wild West activity is disrespectful to the Wild West. I mean, this is just quite incredible. This is like tulipomania, but without the underlying bulbs. I mean, that's all it is. And the idea that this is going to be money, that was the justification that Bitcoin was going to be money. I mean, honestly, give us a break. No way.
I'm astounded at that figure. I hadn't heard that figure. I didn't realize so many of the investing public in this country had it.
Yeah, nor did I. Nor did I. But I mean, this was something. It was reported in the Telegraph, so it must be true. This I think was about 2 or 3 years ago, and I was absolutely staggered. I mean, I don't know whether they would, the man with the clipboard going around asking people, and of course, if you ask them a question like that, oh yeah, of course, you sort of say, oh, of course, I'm a leading expert in this. I've heard of this, and sort of, you can see that. How misleading the survey might become. I mean, we see this in politics all the time. Surveyors being told what the interviewee thinks the man with the clipboard wants to hear.
Exactly. I mean, I get whenever I talk about. I don't often talk about crypto, but I always get after like you, 50 odd years in the City of London. Wealth management, all sorts of different things that I've done over the years. I always get some crypto enthusiast from Des Moines or somewhere like that, or some sort of one-horse bloody town in the Midwest, always telling me I don't understand it. The trouble is with Bloom, you simply don't understand it. And I sometimes ping back and I said, I understand it only too well.
Yeah.
And I've had some, and I've made a buck or two on it in the past because I like a dabble. Who doesn't like a dabble? I like a dabble on the Grand National. Last winner I had was 1966, which was Team Spirit, incidentally. So I'm not very successful on the horses. But sooner or later, it's going to be, it's going to be the bigger fool theory, isn't it? It's the bigger fool.
It is already that. It is already that. I mean, when you look at Michael Saylor's business, I can't remember what it's called now. I mean, basically, he is issuing convertible stock, convertible into Bitcoin at higher prices than they are at the moment. And people are buying it. They're paying a premium to go and buy something they can already buy in the market. I mean, this is greater fools. I mean, it really is absolutely nonsensical. Honestly, the whole thing is just, it's a scam. It's no more than that.
Well, good. I'm glad you put my mind at rest, because I was beginning to think I was losing the bloody plot, having read it up on it now nearly all morning and some of last night. I was beginning to think something. I felt like I'd felt perhaps when I was in trying to follow quadratic equations, double mathematics, in the 60s at my grammar school, staring out of the window at the cricket nets, wondering if there was a God.
Yeah, I think actually it's a lot simpler than that. You have to understand, and I know you understand this, but a lot of viewers, particularly those invested in crypto, won't understand, is you have to understand the relationship between money, which is final settlement, which is gold. Legally, this is the important point. Legally, this is the case in everybody's common law. And deferred settlement, which is always credit. Deferred settlement is a situation basically where you don't have final settlement. There's always a promise in the future. Now, you and I might enter into a transaction, and I buy something from you, you have sold something to me, and that's the end of the matter. And we think that's the end of it. But I have paid you by transfer from my bank account, which again is an obligation which was owed to me by my bank, into your bank account. And that's an obligation which is now owed to you by your bank. This is not final settlement at all. It's credit just going round and round and round and round. Now, the whole world works on credit. It doesn't, we don't rush out and sort of, pass, quarter sovereigns across the counter to each other in settlement of this, that, or the other thing. No, we hoard that. We keep that to one side. And if we're confident about the value of credit, we don't really need to hold very much in the way of gold. We don't. So that is the key relationship. Now, it raises the question, what happens if you have a world where Bitcoin is the money? For a start, it hasn't got the legal status, but we'll assume it has for the moment. And credit has got to be created on the back of it for it to be useful. So imagine that you're building a factory and you do all your calculations as a businessman. I mean, you are the expert in your particular area. You're the entrepreneur who can best work out the future market for your product, the price, you know how much it's going to cost to manufacture, and you calculate your profit margin. Now, part of that calculation is I've got to get some credit in order to build this factory. Right. If I get my credit, which is tied to Bitcoin, I need to know what the value of that credit is going to be at the end of the project, which might be, say, 3 or 5 years. We've got no idea. We can't do the calculation. We can't do that simple calculation, which every businessman needs. Because the basis of Bitcoin, if you talk to the Bitcoiners, is that with its hard stop at 21 million units and the infinite expansion of central bank credit, there's only one way for it to go in terms of purchasing power, and that's up, 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 up. Yeah, well, that's great. You can't owe credit on the back of that because you're going to get crucified. For Bitcoin to be money, assuming that that was the case, and it cannot be because it has no legal status whatsoever, from that point alone, it would drive us back into the Middle Ages. It's just a nonsense. The whole thing is an absolute nonsense. And it's being promoted by people on this idea that this could be a future for money. That bit is completely wrong. But I bet you everybody you talk to who owns Bitcoin actually sees it as something they're going to make loads and loads of dollars in, or pounds or euros. That is their interest, and it's time they got honest about it. Furthermore, they're sort of forecasting a collapse of government. And when I talk to, sort of Bitcoiners about, look, you don't have the legal status, they say, oh, no, it doesn't matter. The whole thing's going to fall apart. So in other words, they're expecting complete anarchy. That's the justification for what for the whole thing. If you're going to have, total anarchy, how are you going to be able to charge your phone on which these things reside? How are you going to do your transactions? And furthermore, if you're a tech expert and you're imbued with the whole thing, I mean, maybe you might find someone to do a transaction with, but is the rest of the world really going to do this? What the hell is like? This is a niche activity which is never, ever going to go mainstream. Furthermore, it is basically driven by pure speculation. It is a bubble on the top of a credit bubble. And when the credit bubble starts imploding, they will go to zero. And I really mean that, zero. You will lose everything if you're in it. And at the moment, it is absolutely full of crooks who are promoting, running Ponzi schemes and all the rest of it. This is very dangerous. I would strongly urge anyone to think very, very hard about whether they should have any cryptocurrency at all. And if in doubt, get out.
Thank you, Alasdair. That's most kind of you. Thank you very much. That will certainly ensure emails from all over the world telling me that we don't understand it.
I'm sure. But then what you ought to do is go back to them and say, do you understand the relationship between money and credit? Discuss.
Well, I mean, that would take them away from their burger flipping far too quickly. Far too long.
I guess it probably would.
Anyway, thanks again, Alasdair. And I hope everybody found that stimulating. Stimulating is the word I'm looking for. And I thank Alasdair yet again for coming on and sparing his very valuable time indeed. Thank you.
Very much my pleasure.
I sometimes wonder, Alasdair, I don't understand anything that's going on in the world at the moment at all, really. I should be in a home for the bewildered. I mean, did you see that clip of that sergeant banging on the door of a woman at 2:30 in the morning because she said he was advising her, not arresting her, advising her about something she tweeted at 2:30 in the morning. A sergeant.
Nonsense, absolute nonsense.
And,
Yeah,
and it's every day. It's in their hundreds and thousands.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Everything's gone mad.
Completely. Yeah. I mean, it's the the one thing I would say, Trump has got absolutely right, is to do away with all this woke stuff. Though I think he's having quite a lot of difficulty himself trying to get everybody off this woke rubbish. But here, I mean, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. It's socially divisive and destructive, and I think that's the intention of it. I really do.
Yes, I agree, and I think it depends who's pulling the strings, and we don't really know some of the names. I expect we don't ever know, but it can only be to destroy the infrastructure and heritage of this country. It can only be one reason to do it, and that is the Fabian ambition of if you will, a neo-communist society. There is no other explanation.
That's absolutely right. And funnily enough, I put up a thing on my Substack a long time ago, which I might repeat actually, where Ed Griffin, the guy who wrote, what's called The Beast from, with the founding of the Fed. I can't remember what he called it. Anyway, he interviewed a guy called Besimov, who was a Russian KGB officer who defected to the West, I think in the mid-'80s. And he described how there was a department of the KGB which was working to undermine Western society. And they had a very simple program. And they were behind all the student riots in Paris in the 60s, flower power, etc. All the sort of student sit-downs we had in this country, Baader-Meinhof gang, and so on and so forth, disrupting everything. And of course, there's people are now, our senior politicians, and
exactly,
their children are running businesses. All sort of thinking this, that Davos is wonderful and all the rest of it because it sort of goes with whatever. And this is the destruction of society. And the irony in all this is that Russia has come through this with its society intact, despite communism. And you want to go into Moscow and talk about your homosexuality and all the rest of it, you get arrested. Quite right too. I mean, it's the sort of thing which that sort of thing is personal. It's not something which should be sort of flaunted in the way it is in our society. And it's all to undermine the Christian ethos. And you look at Miliband, and it's exactly, that's him. That's what he's doing. That's what he's doing with energy.
I mean, he's insane.
Oh, yeah. But, if you understand what he's trying to do, he's actually got himself into a very destructive position. He's just destroying the economy. And Starmer daren't get rid of him because he's got so much support from the left wing, from the ultra left wing. This is a man who at one stage could have become prime minister, for God's sake. And one thing the first thing I saw which he really screwed up was the Somerset levels, because when he was environment secretary, he refused to dredge the Parrett and the Tone rivers. And consequently, we had those huge, great floods, about 7 or 8 years ago. And it was underwater for 3 months. And then, what's his name? Patterson came in and sorted it out. He was a good guy. He got eventually chucked out. His wife committed suicide, which I think was an absolute disaster.
Oh, yes, I know. She was a member of the Surtees Society, and we used to share the occasional sherbet once a year.
Yeah.
Dreadful.
Yeah.
Dreadful. Anyway.
Yeah, I know. Exactly. Anyway, that's so. But we're seeing the complete destruction of everything, and so hang on to your gold. And the quicker it happens. I mean, I want it to happen before I'm, in my grave, as it were. We've been expecting this for decades.
Yes, I know. As I said to somebody in an interview the other day, I said, I am always right. I'm often wrong on timing. I can
Well,
tell you
exactly.
what is going to happen
Yeah,
because
but
I
not
know
when.
it must happen.
Yeah,
But I
but not.
couldn't tell you it's Christmas or Easter this year or next year. And of
Yeah.
course, as we both city men, we both know timing is everything.
Well, it certainly is. But I mean, if you look at what's going on, the credit bubble is the biggest credit bubble in history. When this one blows, it will be immensely destructive. It will destroy wealth big time. I mean, when you think that we've got the same symptoms that we had in the late 1920s, running up to the peak of the market in 1929, and then on top of that, we had Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act. We got exactly the same thing today, except today the bubble is far, far bigger. It is the biggest in recorded financial history. When it goes, it's going to take everything with it. And of course, what governments will do is they will try and ensure that nobody goes bust. What that basically means is that instead of credit contracting, its value will go down, its value will implode. It's inevitable. And you can see that gold is beginning to, reflect this risk.
As most of you know, my work is very heavily independently research based. And I get my information from all over the world. It would help if you press the subscribe button and the little bell next to it, because the more subscribers I have, the more likely it is that international independent research institutes will share their material with me. It's most helpful, and then of course I automatically share it with you. So surprise, won't cost you anything. Thank you very much.